Dad perfect events. I hired a cleaning lady while my son was away on vacation. An hour later, she called me in a panic. "Sir, someone is crying in the attic. It's not the TV." I rushed over there and discovered their dirty secret. My name is Harvey Coleman. I'm 62 years old, living in Portland, Oregon. I spent 38 years as a social worker before I retired 2 years ago. I always believed you could spot trouble in a family from a mile away. Broken eye contact, nervous laughter. Kids who flinch when adults move too fast. 38 years of walking into homes where things weren't what they seemed taught me to trust my instincts. But I never thought I'd need those instincts with my own son. Marshall is my only child. 36 years old now, works as a sales manager for some tech company, pulls in around $95,000 a year. Not bad for a kid who barely scraped through community college. He wasn't always this distant. I remember when he was 8, he'd wait by the window every evening, watching for my car. The second I pulled into the driveway, he'd come running out, asking about my day, telling me about school. Those words used to be my favorite part of coming home. That changed about 4 years ago, when he met Sarah Mitchell, now Sarah Coleman, unfortunately. She's 34, works as what she calls an Instagram influencer, which, as far as I can tell, means she takes pictures of herself in expensive clothes and gets paid for it somehow. She's got about 47,000 followers, always talking about their aesthetic and their brand. The first time Marshall brought her to my apartment for dinner, she spent 20 minutes photographing her plate from different angles before the food got cold. I should have seen the red flags then. But you want your kid to be happy, don't you? Here's what I didn't know then, what Marshall never told me. He had a daughter from a previous relationship, Sophie. Her mother, Jennifer, had died in a car accident when Sophie was 2. Marshall had custody, was getting $1,200 monthly from the state to help with her care. But when Sarah came into the picture, she made it clear that being a stepmom wasn't part of her brand. "It's me or the kid," she'd apparently told him. And Marshall, weak as always when it came to women, chose Sarah. 4 years ago, I did something I thought was generous. I had this house on Cedar Hill Drive in the suburbs. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, nothing fancy, but solid. I'd been thinking about downsizing anyway, so I transferred the deed to Marshall. Well, not exactly. I kept the property in my name, but gave them full right to live there rent-free. Call it a father's instinct. Or maybe those decades in social services taught me to always keep a backup plan. "Dad, this is incredible," Marshall had said when I handed him the keys. Sarah and we won't forget this. Funny how people's memories work. Since then, the calls became less frequent. First, it was every week, then every other week, then just holidays and birthdays. The invitations to visit stopped entirely about 18 months ago. "We're just so busy with work, Dad," Marshall would say when I'd suggest stopping by. "The house is a mess anyway. Maybe next month." Next month never came. Now I understand why. They couldn't risk me seeing Sophie. That's why I was surprised when my phone rang on the morning of June 3rd and Marshall's name popped up on the screen. "Hey, Dad, got a favor to ask," he said, skipping right past any greeting. "No, how are you?" "No small talk, straight to business. Sure, what do you need?" "Sarah and I are heading to Hawaii for 10 days, leaving tomorrow morning. The house is kind of a disaster, and we want it cleaned while we're gone. Deep cleaning, you know. Would you mind hiring someone to do it? Well, reimburse you, obviously." I paused, coffee cup halfway to my lips. In 18 months, they couldn't spare 2 hours for their father to visit, but now they needed me to arrange their cleaning service. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Why can't you just hire someone yourselves? We've been so swamped getting ready for the trip," Marshall said. There was an edge to his voice, that defensive tone he'd developed over the years. "It's just easier if you handle it. You're retired. You've got the time, right?" I could have said no, should have said no. But when your kid asks for help, even your distant, ungrateful kid, you say yes, fine, I'll take care of it, great. Just make sure they're thorough. Sarah wants everything spotless. Baseboards, windows, the attic, everything. I'll text you our flight details. The call ended. No thank you, no love you, Dad. Just click. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. Then I called Beverly Carter, a woman I'd worked with years ago on a case involving a neglected home. She'd quit social work to start a cleaning business. Said it was better for her mental health. Smart woman, wed stayed in touch, exchanged Christmas cards, that sort of thing. "Beverly, it's Harvey Coleman. I need a favor. She agreed to do the job, said she could start the following morning. I gave her the address and the spare key I still had from when I'd owned the house. Just a deep clean, I told her. They want everything done, attic included. No problem, Mr. Coleman. He'll take care of it. The next morning, June 4th, I drove over to Cedar Hill Drive to let Beverly in and show her around. Marshall and Sarah had already left for the airport. Probably couldn't risk running into me. The house looked the same from the outside, but inside it was different. Everything was white and gray and sterile. Sarah's aesthetic, I suppose. Photos of the two of them covered the walls. Beach vacations, restaurant dinners, hiking trips, all smiling, all perfect. Not a single picture included me. More importantly, not a single picture showed any trace of a child. It's a beautiful home, Beverly said politely, though I could see her taking in the cold showroom quality of it all. It used to be, I muttered. All right, I'll let you get to work. Call me if you need anything. I drove back to my apartment in downtown Portland, about 25 minutes in normal traffic. My place was smaller, just a one-bedroom near Lloyd District, but it was mine. No pretense, no brand, just a space where I could restore old furniture in peace, my hobby since retirement. I'd been working on a 1940s dresser I'd found at an estate sale, sanding down decades of paint to reveal the oak underneath. I'd been at it for maybe an hour when my phone rang. Beverly's name on the screen. Mr. Coleman, her voice was shaking. I need you to come back here right now. My stomach dropped. In all the years I'd known Beverly, I'd never heard her sound like this. What's wrong? What happened? There's someone in the attic. Someone crying. I thought maybe it was a TV at first, or a radio left on, but I checked. Mr. Coleman, there's someone up there. Someone real, and they're crying. The dresser, my coffee, everything else vanished from my mind. I'm on my way. Don't go up there. Stay downstairs. I'll be there as fast as I can. I grabbed my keys and ran. I made that drive in 14 minutes. Don't ask me how. The streets of Portland blurred past, traffic lights just suggestions. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Someone crying in the attic, in my son's house. My mind was racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. 38 years as a social worker, you see things. You walk into houses where children are kept in closets, where elderly parents are locked in basements, where the worst of humanity hides behind closed doors and drawn curtains. I told myself I was done with that world, retired, free. But old instincts don't retire. They just wait. Beverly was standing on the front porch when I pulled up, her phone clutched in both hands. Her face was pale, eyes wide. She'd seen something that shook her, and Beverly had been in social work for 15 years before she quit. She wasn't easy to rattle. It's still going, she said, as I climbed the porch steps. The crying. It stopped for a bit, but then it started again. I unlocked the door, and we went inside. The house was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning, and, faintly, from somewhere above us, a soft hiccuping sound. A child's crying. Unmistakable once you'd heard it as many times as I had. The attic access was in the hallway ceiling, a pull-down ladder. I yanked the cord and the stairs unfolded with a creak that seemed too loud in the silence. Beverly stayed at the bottom, watching as I climbed up. The attic was dim, lit only by light filtering through a small circular window at one end. Boxes were stacked along the walls. Christmas decorations, old clothes, the accumulated junk of 4 years. The air was stale and hot, even with ventilation. And in the far corner, I saw it. An old wooden closet, the kind you'd find in a Victorian house, completely out of place up here. The crying was coming from inside it. My hands were shaking as I crossed the attic. Each step felt like it took an hour. I'd been in situations like this before. Finding hidden children, discovering secrets, families kept locked away. But this was different. This was my son's house, my son's attic, my son's secret. I opened the closet door. Inside was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, thin, too thin. Her dark hair was tangled and dirty. She wore a stained pink t-shirt and shorts that were too small for her. Behind her, I could see a thin mattress on the floor, some plastic plates with food residue dried on them, a half-empty water bottle. She was pressed into the corner, knees drawn up to her chest, looking at me with huge, terrified eyes. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was seeing. This was every nightmare case I'd worked on in my career, except it was happening in my own family, to a child I didn't even know existed. I crouched down slowly, making myself smaller, less threatening, old training kicking in automatically. "Hey there," I said softly. "My name is Harvey. I'm not going to hurt you. Can you tell me your name?" She shrank back further. Her breathing was fast, panicked. "It's okay," I continued, keeping my voice gentle, steady. "I'm here to help. Are you hungry? Thirsty? I can get you something." She watched me for a long moment, then in a voice barely above a whisper, "Are you the cleaning lady's friend?" "Yes, Beverly called me. She heard you crying and got worried." I tried to be quiet, the girl said, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. "I tried so hard, but I got scared. It's dark up here at night, and I heard noises, and I thought maybe, it's all right. You don't have to be quiet anymore. What's your name, sweetheart?" Another pause. Then, "Sophie. My name is Sophie. Sophie." Now the pieces were falling into place. This was Marshall's daughter, the one he'd hidden from me, from everyone. My granddaughter. "How old are you, Sophie?" "5. I'll be 6 in August. That's a good age." "And Sophie, can you tell me whose house this is? Who brought you?" "Here?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "My daddy, Marshall. He said I have to stay up here while he and Sarah are gone. He said to be very quiet and not come down, and he'd be back soon." Her voice cracked. "He said, I'm supposed to stay hidden because I'm not supposed to be here." The cold that had been spreading through my chest since I opened that closet door turned to ice. My daddy, Marshall. This was my granddaughter. Marshall had a daughter, had been hiding her in his attic. My granddaughter, kept like a secret, like something shameful, locked away in a closet in the dark, and had known nothing. Nothing. "Sophie," I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. "I'm Marshall's father. That makes me your grandfather? And I promise you, you're not staying in this attic anymore." Her eyes widened. "You're my grandpa?" "Yes, sweetheart. I am, and we're going to get you out of here right now." I helped her stand. She was shaky on her feet, like she hadn't walked much recently, and guided her toward the attic. Stairs. Beverly gasped when she saw Sophie, her hand flying to her mouth. "Call 911, I told Beverly, my voice harder than I'd intended. "Tell them we found a child being kept in an attic. Tell them we need police and child protective services. Now." Beverly nodded and pulled out her phone, already dialing. I carried Sophie downstairs. She weighed almost nothing and sat her on the couch. I got her water, some crackers from the kitchen. She ate like she was starving, which she probably was. While Beverly talked to the 911 operator, I sat next to Sophie, and pieces of my life rearranged themselves into a horrible new picture. My son had a daughter, had hidden her from me, from everyone, had kept her locked in an attic like she was something to be ashamed of. The siren started in the distance, growing louder. Sophie flinched at the sound. "It's okay," I told her, taking her small hand in mine. "Those are the good guys. They're coming to help." She looked up at me with those big, scared eyes. "Is Daddy going to be mad?" I thought about Marshall on a beach in Hawaii, drinking cocktails, posting perfect photos with Sarah, while his daughter sat in darkness in an attic closet. "Don't you worry about your daddy," I said quietly. "I'll handle him." Officer Randy Foster arrived first, followed 3 minutes later by a white sedan with Department of Human Services plates. I recognized the protocols immediately, the careful approach, the way Foster's eyes swept the scene, cataloging everything. The DHS caseworker was a woman in her 40s named Nancy Walsh, someone I'd worked with on exactly 2 cases before I retired. She recognized me instantly. "Harvey Coleman?" She looked confused, then concerned. "What are you doing here?" "This is my son's house," I said. The words tasted like ash. "That's my granddaughter on the couch. I didn't know she existed until an hour ago." I watched Nancy's face shift through several emotions. Surprise, understanding, professional detachment. She'd seen enough in this job to know that families could hide anything. "Well, need your statement," she said, pulling out a tablet. I told her everything from the beginning, about Marshall's call requesting the cleaning service, about Beverly finding Sophie, about the closet in the attic. Nancy took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Officer Foster photographed the attic, the closet, the mattress on the floor. Beverly gave her statement, her voice still shaking. Then they took Sophie to the hospital for examination. She clung to my hand when the paramedics approached with their bright smiles and gentle voices. "It's okay," I told her. "I'll follow right behind you. I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" Her voice was so small. Promise. At Portland Providence Medical Center, they ran every test imaginable. While doctors examined Sophie, I sat in the waiting room with Nancy. That's when the real picture started emerging. "We pulled the records," Nancy said, her voice carefully neutral. "Sophie Coleman, mother deceased 3 years ago. Cancer. Father Marshall Coleman was granted full custody. No red flags in the file. 3 years. Marshall had been hiding his daughter for 3 years. Ever since Sarah came into the picture. What about child support?" I asked. Nancy scrolled through her tablet. Monthly payments of $1,200 paid by the state to an account in Sophie's name. "Let me guess," I said. "He had access to that account." She looked at me sharply. "How did you know?" "Because that's what people do when they want something to look legitimate on paper." I'd seen it a dozen times in my career. Parents setting up accounts for their kids, then draining them for personal use. Check his banking records. I'll bet you'll find withdrawals matching his own expenses. Nancy made a note. "Well, look into it." The doctor came out 3 hours later. Sophie was malnourished, dehydrated, showing signs of prolonged stress and isolation. No physical abuse, small mercy, but clear evidence of neglect. They wanted to keep her, overnight for observation. I went in to see her. She was in a hospital bed that looked far too big for her small frame, hooked up to an IV. Her eyes were closed, but they opened when I sat down beside her. "Grandpa." The word was tentative, like she was testing it out. "I'm here, sweetheart. Are they going to make me go back to the attic?" The question broke something in my chest. "No, never. I promise you that." She was asleep again within minutes, exhausted. I sat there watching her breathe and felt rage building like a slow fire in my bones. Not the hot, explosive kind, the cold, calculated kind that plans and waits and strikes when the moment is right. My phone buzzed, Nancy texting me. "Initial findings support neglect claim. We're opening a formal investigation. DHS will contact you tomorrow about emergency placement options." I texted back, "I want her placed with me." "Well, discuss it tomorrow." 2 days after Sophie came to stay with me, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. Unknown. Number. I answered anyway. Dad. Marshall's voice was sharp, controlled fury barely contained. So they knew. The Oregon State Police must have tracked them down in Hawaii. I pictured them getting the call on some sunny beach, fruity drinks in hand. Perfect vacation interrupted by the consequences of their choices. The image was almost enough to make me smile. "Good morning to you too, son. Don't play games with me. The police called us. They said Sophie was found in our house. That she's in the hospital." "That you," his voice cracked, and I heard Sarah shouting something in the background, "that you called CPS on us. I called 911 when I found a malnourished child locked in a closet in your attic. What did you expect me to do? She's my daughter. You had no right. I had every right. I'm her grandfather. Not that you bothered to mention her existence to me." There was a pause and I could hear them arguing, Sarah's voice getting louder. Then Marshall was back. "We're coming home today, and when we get there, you're giving Sophie back. She's not a borrowed car, Marshall. She's a child. And no, I'm not giving her back to the people who kept her in an attic. You can't do this. You can't just take someone's kid. I didn't take her. The state placed her with me through emergency kinship care. Everything's legal and documented. But please, do come home. I'm sure the authorities would love to speak with you in person." He hung up without another word. The next morning, I called Dorothy Foster, a family law attorney whose name I'd gotten from a colleague years ago. Her office was downtown in one of those glass towers near Pioneer Courthouse Square. I made an appointment for that afternoon. Dorothy Foster was in her late 50s, sharp-eyed and direct. Her office walls were covered with framed degrees and certificates. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking occasional notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. "Mr. Coleman, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What you're describing is a strong case for neglect, possibly criminal charges. But Marshall is still Sophie's legal father. If he wants to fight for custody, he can. Can he win? Not if we present the evidence properly. Medical records showing malnourishment and neglect. Testimony from the cleaning woman who found her. Police and DHS reports about the conditions she was kept in. Dorothy tapped her pen against the legal pad. But here's what we need to aim for. Not just temporary custody for you, but permanent guardianship. And, if possible, termination of Marshall's parental rights. How do we do that? We document everything. Every instance of neglect, every medical finding, every financial record that shows he was using Sophie's money for himself. We build a case so airtight that no judge could possibly rule in his favor. It won't be fast, and it won't be cheap. My retainer for a case like this is $8,500, and my hourly rate is $350. I had about $70,000 in savings. It would hurt, but Sophie was worth every penny. When do we start? Dorothy smiled. Not a warm smile, but a satisfied one. We already have. The court date arrived 2 weeks later. The Multnomah County Courthouse was downtown, a stern concrete building that had seen thousands of family disputes play out in its courtrooms. I'd been here before many times, sitting on the other side as a witness for the state. Today was different. Today I was the petitioner, fighting for my granddaughter. Dorothy met me in the lobby, briefcase in hand, dressed in a sharp gray suit. Ready? As ill ever be. Marshall and Sarah are already here with their attorney. Robert Phillips, decent lawyer, mostly does corporate work. Hell, try to paint this as a family misunderstanding. Claim you're overstepping. Don't engage with them in the hallway. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. In the waiting area, outside the courtroom, I saw them. Marshall in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Sarah in a conservative dress. That looked nothing like her usual style. Someone had coached them on courtroom appearance. Judge Ruth Williams presiding, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. I'd appeared in her courtroom twice before, years ago. She didn't remember me, but that was fine. I wasn't looking for favors, just justice. Dorothy laid out our case methodically. The discovery of Sophie in the attic closet. The medical reports showing malnourishment and signs of prolonged neglect. Beverly's testimony about finding her. The photographs of the living space, if you could call it that. A thin mattress, plastic dishes, a single overhead light bulb. Judge Williams' expression grew harder with each piece of evidence. Then Dorothy brought out the financial records, the bank statement showing Marshall's misuse of Sophie's support money. $1,200 monthly deposits intended for her care, consistently withdrawn for personal expenses. A new car, luxury vacations, designer, purchases from stores Sarah frequented. Mr. Marshall Coleman was receiving $1,200 monthly in child support, money intended for Sophie's care. Our forensic accountant has traced these funds through his various accounts. They were consistently diverted to personal expenses. Over 36 months, approximately $43,200 was misappropriated. Judge Williams looked at Marshall. Mr. Coleman, do you dispute these findings? Marshall's lawyer whispered urgently to him. Marshall shook his head. No, Your Honor. Did you use money designated for your daughter's care for personal expenses? A long pause. Yes. While she lived in an attic closet? Marshall's voice was barely audible. Yes. The courtroom was silent. Judge Williams reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. I'm granting permanent guardianship to Harvey Coleman. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Marshall made a sound, a choked gasp. Sarah grabbed his arm. The evidence presented today suggests multiple charges, including child neglect, child endangerment, and financial exploitation of a minor. This court will reconvene once the criminal proceedings are resolved to make a final determination on parental rights. She banged her gavel. Court adjourned. 6 months later, Marshall and Sarah both pled guilty. Marshall got 30 months in prison. Sarah got 24 months. Their perfect Instagram life crumbled to nothing. And Sophie? Sophie got a grandfather who'd spend the rest of his life making sure she never felt unwanted again. She's 6 now, in 1st grade, has 3 close friends, and a laugh that fills up my whole apartment. Sometimes justice comes slow, but when it comes, it's worth the wait. You never really know your own family until crisis forces the truth into the light. And sometimes the people you trust most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. A grandfather's love doesn't retire, and neither does his duty to protect the innocent, even when it means going to war against his own blood.